It might also help if I had things unmuted. Great start! Okay! I think we're live. Is it working this time? There are apparently people watching. Somebody in chat say hi, please. Alright, there we go. Sorry about the slight confusion with the stream nuking itself. I don't know what happened. Something did, clearly. Anyway, I'm here now. So hopefully everyone who was hanging out in the stream that came before will be able to get over to this one. So anyway, welcome to Owl Nights at the BBO in our little digital session. Sarah, our head biologist, is just out, hopefully collecting owls right now. I will say right off the bat, temper expectations slightly. The conditions outside can be best described as suboptimal. Bit windy, which it's not windy enough to close the nets, but it is windy enough to potentially drown out the sound of the audio lures that we're running. So we've already caught one tonight, which is good, but we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, good evening, everyone. I'll just keep saying hi as people continue filtering in. Because YouTube is great and sometimes seems to get really uncooperative when you schedule a stream and then try to jump into it later via OBS. I'm still working on figuring out how streams work, clearly. How's the season so far? Season's pretty good. In terms of songbirds, we're closing in on 2,000 captures for the fall season. With owls, I think we're coming up on 200 as of last night. We got 18 last night. I don't remember what that brings our season total to. Oh, we were over 200 last night. Season total is now at 210, which is cool. So it does seem like it's a slightly better year than last year, which was definitely one of our lower years on record. So that's nice. Also, Mom in chat. Hi, Mom. Fulfilling my obligation there. So anyone managed to catch the aurora last night? That was pretty cool. Apparently it's supposed to be good tonight as well, although we haven't seen anything quite yet, but we're outside pretty frequently, so we should spot something. Hatch year percentage? You know what, I haven't actually looked at that yet. Give me a sec. See if I can eyeball something, just real quick. From eyeballing it, it looks like we're well over 50%, probably over 70 or so. I think that's high. We'll have to ask Sarah about that when she gets back. 70% seems high. Hello, Tracy. I should probably actually pop onto social media and delete the old post with the now obsolete link, just so we don't have any confusion. Okay, good. That does seem a little high. Yeah, we've definitely been getting like second years and after second years. We got a really good one the other night. 50% of these, lots of second-year birds. Sarah's coming back, and she's got 2 bags. Hey, look, we got stuff.
We got some owls.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting off the stream with 2 owls. Which is great, because I was kind of expecting to sit here for half an hour trying to fish for things to say. But this is great, because I don't need to make stuff up. No sign of the aurora yet tonight. We've seen well, okay, that's a lie. We've seen a little bit of haze, but not anything properly spectacular. Anyway, now we have birds. I'm going to switch over to the banding cam. Also say hi to Sarah.
Hi, I don't know where my camera is.
The camera's over here.
Hi. Okay.
So we have the McGill Bird Observatory in chat.
Hey guys.
They were asking about our hatch year percentage.
Ooh, I haven't looked at it this year, but it's usually 70% of our captures tend to be hatchers.
Yeah, that's what I eyeballed it. Yeah. They were saying that it's about 50% there of mostly second years, which is interesting.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Anyway, let me get the proper camera there.
There we go.
So your camera view is about here-ish.
Okay.
Oh wait, hang on, that webcam is not on. That would help. All right. So your view thing is about here-ish.
Okay, well our first owl I'm actually going to process fairly quickly here because he got tongued. So that means while he got tangled in the net, a little bit of the net got wrapped around his tongue, which isn't too bad of an issue. It has a tiny little cut, and he will survive and live on to be very well. But it just means I want to process him nice and quickly and send him on his merry way. And so I'm just going to do this owl very quickly, and the second owl we can go through all the steps of what we're actually doing. But he needs to let go of his little tail, doesn't he?
In the meantime, you can get a nice close-up look at speed banding.
Yeah. All I'm doing is putting this band around his leg, giving it a little spin, making sure it's on nice and secure. And then, oh, hi little friend. Confirming my band number, which is number 42. And each one of these birds has a unique 9-digit serial number. You can cooperate. There we go, little friend. Wing chord of 141. Tail of 67. 141, 67.
141 makes it a female, I think.
Yep, and it's a hatch year. Hatch year, female. And we got some biomalt, so it's FPF. And this one's good to go. So here's our very quick, very close up first solid owl of our live stream. Where's my camera? Somewhere there.
You're on camera, you're good.
But she's ready to go, and I'd like to see her on her way. But we'll spend a lot more time with the second owl.
All right. In the meantime, I'm just going to quickly tweak something with the actual stream. I have a text thing going about donating to the BBO, but I don't have any link to actually do that with. I'll be right back with you, just one moment.
Okie dokie. And that was our 2100.
Okay.
Good to go over there. Shane has all the experience of the tech skills that I do not. So the first thing we do is we weigh our owl in the scale and zero it.
Let me just get this camera positioned properly again.
No worries. So by putting the owl in the bag on the scale and zeroing it, once I take out the owl, I can weigh the bag, and that gives me the negative weight of our little owl. And there's our adorable little friend. Not used to working with the cameras, but there you go. Boop. And this guy weighs 92.3 grams. This one was from net A2.
I can scribe for you.
Thank you. Please do. And I need to fix that last 8 there. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check her out, make sure she's not already wearing some bands, and we're going to band her. So we're going to use these lightweight aluminum bands, and each one of them has a unique 9-digit serial number, and no 2 birds in all of North America will have the same number on their leg. So that way we can identify individual birds. And so what I get to do first is open the band. So I have these specialized pliers where I open the pliers, it opens the posts on them. So I put those posts into the band, open up that band nice and evenly, and then I can take my open band into my pliers, and then I'm going to switch how I'm holding the bird because I have very small hands, and I cannot band the owl in this position. So I'll switch from a bander's grip into an upside down popsicle grip. And now I can pinch the knee joint, take my open band in the pliers, put it around our little owl's leg, and I'll close the band almost all the way, but not entirely because our owls have very feathery legs. And so I'm going to twist that band around to tuck in those feathers. Doo, doo, doo. Once they're tucked in, I can then come back with my pliers and squeeze that band fully closed. And I can squeeze as hard as I want with no fear of injuring our owl, because each one of these bands, or each one of these pliers, has a special size hole, so I am not going to injure our bird. And each one of those holes is in accordance with the size of band we're putting on our bird's leg.
The reason for that particular grip is mainly because we very much want to control the legs whenever we're dealing with any kind of raptor. Because raptors, of course, are predators. Predators have weapons that they use to kill their prey, and in owls, that main weapon is going to be their talons. Indeed.
So there's a couple measurements we're going to take. We're going to do a wing chord measurement. And here in North America, we do an unflattened wing chord, which is 140 for this lovely owl. And then we're going to take a tail measurement. So I take my ruler, put it into the tail, push up till I hit bird, which is 68. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to age this owl. And so we do that by looking at the flight feathers. And we're looking at all these flight feathers to see is the coloring and wear consistent across the wing, as in a hatchier bird, because they would have grown out all their feathers at the exact same time. Or do I see different colors of flight feathers indicating different generations of feather growth? Because what happens in our owl's second year of life is that in our saw-whet owls, they'll start replacing their outer primaries and inner secondaries. So you'll get these dark, fresh new feathers on the outside and inside, and in the center, you'll have these retained juvenile feathers that have spent 1 year on the wing being bleached by the sun. This is all uniform in color, so this is going to make it a hatchier bird. This owl hatched this past spring, so this is her first migration. We wish her many trips and very successful migration.
Now, before we start showing off owl features, I actually want to do something with her.
Please do. I need to take off a layer because I'm wearing my jacket from outside still.
Sure.
There we go.
So I'm going to reset this camera up here. There we go. So, as Sarah was mentioning, one of the ways we age birds is mostly by just examining their pattern of molt. Do owls ever vocalize when you bring them inside? Usually not. A lot of birds don't tend to vocalize a whole bunch when they're being handled, except for just sort of a "hey, let go of me" scream. And even then, they don't typically do that super often. Owls, not the most vocal creatures, so they might twitter a little bit, but that's pretty rare. Most of the sound they're going to be making is a bill clap. So you might be hearing a sort of like noise. That's just the owl's beak. This one's not really doing it, but some of the other ones might. It's just a bill clap, it's a defensive display. Owls can see well inside when we bring them in. It takes them a moment for their eyes to adjust, but while they're optimized for nocturnal life, that doesn't mean they're completely blinded during daytime as well. They do sometimes need to fly around during the day when crows find them and start mobbing them and everything. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So the thing I want to do is, one of the ways we age birds is by examining their molt. With owls, we know that in a hatchier bird, all of their feathers on the wing are going to be uniform, because everything except them has already been replaced. In their second year, they'll start replacing some of these feathers, so we'll end up with these outside feathers, these inside feathers being nice and replaced, and these ones over here looking a lot older. In their third year, they're going to start replacing a few of those feathers, so you'll end up with 3 generations of feathers all mixed throughout those wings. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to tell the difference between those feathers. So that is when we bring out a secret weapon, which I'm going to bounce off camera for a second to grab. You're not flying off yet. Give me a minute. So one of the things that we can sometimes use is a black light, because owls have a pigment in their wing feathers called porphyrins. Porphyrins are a very common pigment. They're actually what the hemoglobin in your blood is made from. But the specific porphyrins in an owl's wing will fluoresce bright pink under ultraviolet light. And I have here an ultraviolet lamp. So first I'm just going to cover this owl's eyes, because birds can actually see into the ultraviolet spectrum. So this is basically a giant spotlight for it, and I don't want to be shining a spotlight directly into its face. And then I'm going to flick off the lights. So we're going to get real dark for a second, but you should be able to see the owl properly under the black light in a minute. All right, we are back. This is going to be fun to do one-handed. I'm just going to hold it up in front of this one. Can we actually see that? Does that show up? I have not tested this, for the record. You can see it a little bit. Right over there. Yeah, there we go. So the angle's a little awkward, but you can see the tips of the feathers underneath the wing fluorescing pink underneath that black light. That's a better angle. That's way better. So now you can see that a lot more clearly. So again, that's not the black light reflecting off of it. That's proteins in the actual wing that are fluorescing underneath that light. Where's the switch on this thing? There it is. Let's get our light back. I'll go in the bag.
Actually, for any other owls who want to UV this evening, I forgot to show Shane our newest donation.
Ooh.
Which
we have a new toy?
We do. Which comes from another owl bander who's just retired. So he has this setup where you can be hands-free and then turn on that light and then you can shine the UV underneath.
Oh, that's real cool. I'm gonna play with that immediately. I'm practicing with the new equipment.
Of course. Cover a little owl's eyes, and I'm gonna go on check, see if we have any more owl friends.
Oh wow, that absolutely blows out the camera. Oh, that's neat. I never actually experimented with webcam's UV sensitivity, so yeah, I'm gonna need to use the smaller lamp for this, because that just blows out the camera.
That's fair.
Huh. You know what? Good to experiment.
Do you want me to release our little friend here?
I'll handle releasing.
Okay.
I've got a couple other things I want to show off, and she's still doing fine.
Perfect.
So I say she, by the way, because one of the ways even though we didn't really formally say anything, one of the ways we sex silhouette owls is by a combination of wing chord and weight. The combination of wing chord for this one, wing chord for this one puts it pretty much into the female range just by itself, and its weight is a good 6 grams right into definitive female. So this is a girl owl who is just embarking on her first migration, which is fun. So, I was talking about an owl's weapons earlier. And so, owls have what are called zygodactyl feet. Which you can see, she's got those talons there. Right now they're all kind of tightly furled up because I've got them restrained. Thanks, McGill. Or McGill Bird Observatory. Whoever is manning the McGill Bird Observatory account. Thanks for tuning in. Anyway, you can see here, their default grip is 3 on top, 1 below. But when this owl wants to hurt something, namely me, or these pliers rather, are you going to go for the pliers? There we go, kind of got it. You can see there's now 2 talons on top and 2 talons below. So that's one of the funky things that owls can do, and that's the main thing that defines zygodactyl grip. They can swivel that one outside toe around, allowing them to come in from all sides at once equally, rather than having an asymmetrical grip that's sort of just mostly on top and 1 below. Because when an owl is hunting something, it mainly kills its prey from like massive stabbing trauma from those talons. And so it wants to make sure it's hitting as many vital organs from as many different directions as possible, aiming for maximum lethality. Anyway, that's about all I want to say with this owl. I've been hanging on to it for a minute, and the fact that we've got 2 on that check is really encouraging, so I don't think I need to milk this one all that much more. I'm going to quickly take this one outside for release, and I will be right back. And hopefully Sarah will be right back with more owls that I can talk about. And I am back. Owl flew off just fine. That is kind of the limitation of this live stream format. The one thing I can't actually show you is releasing the owls, because in order to release them, we take them outside, and none of my webcams have long enough wires. So, unfortunately, you'll have to use your imagination for that part. Imagine an owl perching on my arm, looking adorable, sort of bobbing its head, looking around, and then eventually flying off silently. And there you go, you've witnessed a release in your mind. It's just as good as the real thing, right? So Sarah is at the 20-minute mark. Wait, no, at the 5-minute mark. I can read clocks. I remember what time we're supposed to go on check. Typically, if it's been longer than 10 minutes, before she comes back after a check, which we do on the half hours, that's a good sign. Does that mean she's caught something? If she takes longer than 20 minutes, I might go out and try to rescue her. Does that mean there may be several owls? Or a flying squirrel. We do occasionally catch flying squirrels. We have a resident family of them, and the young ones every year need to learn where our nets are the hard way. And that's about enough said of that. Not fun. They try to chew their way out, which isn't great if you're in a net. So it usually just destroys our net and gets them even more tangled. And then when we're trying to bring them out, they chew on us, and that's extraordinarily painful. Yeah. If anybody works in wildlife rehab and would like to teach a pair of biologists how to safely handle a flying squirrel, we're all ears. We know how to handle birds. Mammals, not so much. We kind of usually just try to scruff them, and that works for most things, and not things with a patagium, which is a whole bunch of loose skin that they use to glide. How long has this tirade about flying squirrels been going on? Probably long enough. We actually know some people at Wild North pretty well. One of our summer staff volunteered with Wild North for a while and worked as a vet tech. She taught me she sort of taught me a grip I can use, but I haven't really I tried using it and it didn't work very well, so it's probably just hands-on practice I need. I'm also exaggerating slightly. Show us the inside of your digs. Camera does rotate. At the moment there's not a huge amount to see. Sarah is back, and Sarah is empty-handed. Oh.
Nada! So.
Rip. Well, can't catch stuff every time. We got 2 the last time, and that just means that I get to continue fishing for things to say for the next 20 minutes.
How exciting!
Or longer.
It is wonderful.
Yeah. And I can show off the inside of the immediate lab. So if I rotate the camera a bit.
This is people's first view inside our lab building. This is
a
brand new building. And so this building was able to be constructed this past winter thanks to many different funders, because we are a nonprofit. And so we got some large sum donations made in memory of Mary Weir Hughes that we are sincerely thankful for, as well as some grant funding from the Edmonton Community Foundation. They helped with the interior of the build. Fortress Energy helped with some of our solar. There is another funder that I'll look up after I'm done talking here that also helped contribute towards our solar. Canadian Wildlife Service, yeah, these are all our funders. Canadian Wildlife Service donated the equipment for our Modus tower, and the Edmonton Nature Club helped purchase our Modus tower for us with a large sum donation.
But Sarah, what is Modus?
How about you tell them, because I have to talk to our volunteers who just arrived.
Right, yeah. All right, I also super interrupted you in the middle of the sponsor reel.
That's okay.
This stream has been brought to you in part by I don't know. I haven't rehearsed any of that. I kind of wanted to do a Wayne's World-esque We Bow to No sponsor bit, but I didn't have enough time to actually prepare that. So, would have taken a lot of props. Probably would have not been worth it. Good old throwaway jokes. Anyway, so Sarah was just mentioning CWS providing a bunch of the equipment for our Modus tower. And Modus is a form of wildlife radio tracking, which is actually incredibly exciting. I'm just going to get that window closed because I'm staring at the delayed stream and it's throwing me off a little bit. So yeah, Modus, wildlife radio tracking. The way Modus works is, first of all, the way banding works is because each of those birds has a completely unique 9-digit serial number, that means that now wherever it's captured, that gets entered into a universal database. So wherever it's recaptured, they can query that band number and then pull up exactly where that bird originally came from. It also pings off everywhere it was recaptured along its way. So you band a bird on its breeding grounds, you recapture it on its overwintering grounds, you have 2 data points. You can draw a line between those. You capture it at a stopover point sometime on migration. You now have 3 data points and can draw a rougher line. You do that enough times across enough individual birds, you get a rough network of migration routes, migration timings. You also get an idea of survivorship, population demographics, population dynamics. You can track populations over time, especially if you're at a long-term monitoring station like this one, where the habitat remains relatively consistent. A precipitous drop in capture rate without any notable environmental cause to cause that, like, you know, smoke in the area or some local environmental change would cause birds to avoid it, that probably means a drop in the local population. Anyway, the problem with that, fundamentally, is that you need to recapture the birds in order to get those data points. And recapture probability is on the order of something like 0.1%. It's not high. The vast majority of birds, we put a band on, we release out the hatch, and then we never see them again. Nobody ever sees them again, because what we're banding is really a drop in the bucket. We band on average about 3,000 birds a year. Some high volume stations will band 10,000. Long Point Bird Observatory bands 40,000 a year across all 3 of its stations. Meanwhile, the total bird population in North America right now is 7 billion. So all of the migration stations across Canada are banding a very, very small proportion of the total bird habitat. So of course, like, a lot of them just get lost in the noise. With MODIS, though, you only need to capture it once, and then you put on a radio transmitting nanotag. Usually they have a finite battery life and they fall off eventually. It's kind of nothing that can be done to actually reclaim them, so they're made to be effectively disposable. But while that radio tracker is going, it's going to ping off any other MODIS towers that are within 15 kilometers of it. And because it'll ping multiple times as it goes through that radius, that MODIS tower can then store, a bunch of telemetry information. So it usually can triangulate and figure out the direction it's going. It figures out the speed the bird's traveling at. It figures out the altitude. I'm not entirely sure how it does all of that without just multiple receivers. Maybe it does have multiple receivers. I'm not sure. Actual radio communications are kind of magic to me. I haven't really looked into how they work. Bit of a knowledge gap, I should fix that. Anyway, getting off track. So with MODIS, you can tag a bird, and then it'll ping off dozens of MODIS towers depending on how much coverage you have. Out in eastern North America, MODIS is actually extremely popular. There's complete coverage across the Gulf of Mexico. There's complete coverage along the Panama Canal, so there's one of these towers every 15 kilometers. So any radio tagged bird that travels along that route is going to ping off one of those towers, at least one. And so with this technology, which is gradually becoming more popular in the West, the MODIS tower we have at our building is, I think, the 4th or 5th one to go up in Alberta, something like that. Anyway, with this technology, we've been able to replicate and then exceed what 60 years of banding has accomplished in about 5 years. It's identified, for instance, a bunch of distinct migratory pathways in Swainson's thrushes, that most notably don't really depend on the geography they're originally coming from. It's phenotypic plasticity. It's just individual decisions made by individual birds, more than like an instinctive drive to go a certain route. Some birds will go for a high-risk, high-reward strategy where they'll cut right across the Gulf of Mexico, which is an incredibly dangerous move because the Gulf of Mexico is a hostile environment without anywhere to land. If you get caught in a headwind, you die because there's no land, there's no food. You run out of fat, you run out of energy, you plunge into the water and you drown. So it's a high-risk strategy, but one that shaves 2 weeks off their travel time relative to the ones that head over land the entire time, following the Mexican coast all the way down to South America, who arrive much later. Arriving earlier means that you can now seize and take advantage of much higher quality habitat that may be on those overwintering grounds. Whereas if you arrive later, you'll find it already taken by the ones who've taken that large risk and had it pay off. So yeah, that's Modus in a nutshell. General science and fundamentals behind it. It's a really exciting technology, and it has some really cool potential behind it. One of the things that Sarah's actually really excited about is being able to Modus tag owls. One of the sort of regulations and things we generally go by is that whenever you're tagging a wild animal with anything, you never want it to exceed more than 5% of its body weight. We don't need to worry about that with bands because most of the time the bands don't even register on our scales, which are sensitive to 0.1 grams. I think one of the 4 short bands that we put on sawwhet owls comes in at like 0.2, and the sawwhets themselves average 80 to 100 grams. So you can do the math, and the math says it's negligible. With Modus tags though, how long they last is usually a function of how heavy they are, because it's battery life is the main thing. We've gotten pretty good at miniaturizing batteries, but there's still kind of a hard cap on the amount of energy per gram that we're able to cram into them. So with songbirds, like a small myrtle warbler or something like that, we can usually put a transmitter on it that'll last for about 3 weeks to a month. On a larger bird like a thrush, we can put something on it that lasts for 2 or 3 months. On an owl, we can put a transmitter on it that'll last up to 7 years, which is huge. Because as soon as you get over a year, you're not only getting the journey there, you're getting the journey there, and then maybe the journey back. And you're getting the journey there, and the journey back, and the journey there, and the journey back. And the really fun thing about that is that maybe the journey there and the journey back and this journey there and this journey back aren't going to be the same route. There's actually a lot that we don't know about owl migration, and one of the big unknowns is migration and nest site fidelity. We don't know how often they come back to the same site year after year. We don't know how often they use the same migratory routes year after year. We don't even know if they use the same route coming back north as they do going south, because spring migration is very poorly understood. There's also this really mysterious dispersal in the summer that has kind of flummoxed biologists for a while, because it's mostly the young ones that disperse out of the nests and they just kind of wander off, which is baffling, because if an area is good enough to actually support a family of sawwhets, be able to raise chicks, you'd expect that area to be able to support them as adults too. So why are they leaving? Where are they going? And that's one of the many questions that Modus can answer. We can Modus tag nestlings while they're still in the nest boxes, and have those tags last long enough to be able to log that dispersal, and then log their migration south, and then log their poorly understood spring migration. So all that's obviously very important in understanding their movements, which is important in understanding what threats might be facing them. One of the big things that banding has done has been able to identify critical stopover habitat, which has since been protected. If that stopover habitat had been cleared or whatever for some kind of land exploitation, we would have seen a massive crash in those bird populations, because that's a bottleneck. Unrelated to banding, but your bird bath, and to be right back. It's not stuck on the screen now, is it? Oh no, it's not. Thought something had gone wrong with the stream, don't mind me. What was I on about? Lost my train of thought. Something about migration. Right, yeah. Birds don't just use a single bit of habitat. They have breeding habitat, they have non-breeding habitat, they have multiple stopover habitats during the migration. If you have an issue with any one of those habitats, you end up with a population bottleneck. Their population is restricted by the functionality of the lowest of those habitats. Is it okay to have a heated bird bath out over winter? I would probably say no. Bird baths over winter are, they're redundant because they freeze over. Having a heated one, I'd argue would probably be actively dangerous, because if birds decide to bathe in it, now they're wet. As soon as they get out of that heated area, that wet is going to freeze, and best case scenario, bog their feathers down, make them unable to fly. Worst case scenario, it just chills them and kills them outright. You don't really need bird baths in the fall, or in the winter rather. Most of the resident birds get all the water they need from digesting fat. So when your body digests fat, it actually yields water as a product. It's called fat catabolysis. That's the reaction. It yields water. Whereas starch catabolysis requires water. It's one of the reasons you always feel thirsty after eating something starch heavy like pizza or French fries or whatever. It's because your body is requiring water to actually break it down. Now we're getting into biochemistry. That's getting into the weeds. Will BBO attach these tags? Yes, eventually. Problem is they're expensive. They're very expensive. Like one of them is like $200. So we'll attach them once we're able to get grants to pay for those, and also once we get enough towers up in Western Alberta, or in Western Canada, to actually make it worth it. Because the usefulness of most data scales linearly with the amount of towers you actually have operational, and so the more towers you have, the more high resolution your data is. And more importantly, the more likely it is that a bird's going to ping off one of them. So at present, we have 5 or 6 towers that we know of in Alberta. We'd like to get a few more. I think CWS or the Canadian Wildlife Service rather, is planning to put up something like 10 various places around Alberta sometime this winter or next spring, something like that. Once those go up, then we'll be able to start considering it. And once we actually get the funding for it, because, again, they're expensive. And we are a non-profit that's funded by a combination of grants, donations, and just whatever fundraising we're able to do. Which reminds me, I don't have the please donate to us thing scrolling on this overview. Boop. There we go. It's also not on the page right. There we go. I could spend like 2 minutes trying to line that up with its position on the other overlays, but I don't want to. So we've got another 7 minutes until net check. I'm going to bounce off camera for a second and grab some water. Because talking for a while makes you thirsty, would you believe? Heavy. Off camera, we have a couple volunteers tonight who are also Sarah's roommates. So they'll be popping in from time to time.
So the birding community, as you all know, is very small. And all of us birding weirdos like to hang out together. There's the camera. There's the camera. Hi, everybody.
I've got this a little awkwardly positioned so that the second webcam is just right in the way.
That's okay. Well, we got about 5 more minutes till the next net check. So hopefully we'll have some more owls. And everyone, make sure you're looking out your window throughout the night, because last night, I don't know if Shane's already talked about it.
I mentioned it a little bit. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, last night there was spectacular northern lights. Some of the best I've ever seen out here. It was about 2 really good 10-minute showings. These rippling green ropes across the sky that were moving and dancing with highlights of purple. And it was all across the sky and even way out to the north across our lake. the Beaver Hill Lake to the north. So
it was pretty cool.
It was phenomenal, and honestly, like the glowing of these aurora borealis lasted for over 4 hours. Now there's that 2 really intense showings, and then we'd still see them throughout the night glowing in the distance and very slowly shifting around. And tonight's supposed to be another good night, not as great as last night, but still, there should be some northern lights according to the researchers.
There was a pretty significant solar storm that's hit Earth it was yesterday at some point. And, you know, that usually results in auroras, particularly very intense ones further south. The ones in Yellowknife were apparently nuts. The social media was absolutely blown up with pictures of auroras all day today. And Sarah was scrolling through and saw some stuff from Yellowknife, and it didn't even look real. It looked like just a watercolor painting that someone had put together. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Northern Lights is really cool. A lot of people have gone into chasing the Northern Lights during the pandemic. It's a great winter activity, especially when it gets dark so early. And you can actually sign up for notifications on your email by going to, I think it's Aurora Chase?
Something like that.
Aurora Alert? Google it. There is a notification you can sign up for. I signed up for it many, many moons ago. And you get an email pop-up when it's a 70% chance of the Northern Lights or a 90% chance. So it's always really exciting, and then you can just drive out of whatever city you live in to get to somewhere where it's darker, and you can see some really fantastic showings.
I was pretty happy about it because one of the things that I really want while staying here was a good showing of Northern Lights, and the last one I got last year was just kind of a vague torus of green haze. It was way out over the lake, and if you stared really closely at that bit over there, you might be able to see it wibbling a little bit. And sure, it was Northern Lights, but it was just like, okay, well, that kind of counts.
Aurora Watch, thank you. I see someone saying it's Aurora Watch. And I see another question on there, which I'm going to leave you with as I go on NetCheck.
Yeah. Responsibilities for the winter. Mainly, it's catching up on data entry. There's usually a component of data analysis. But in addition, we also run a winter education program called BirdSmart. Details are on our website, but it's a really cool program. We travel across the province teaching kids and just people of all ages about birds, conservation, and climate change. We always bring an ambassador raptor into the classroom with us. So right now we're rocking an American kestrel and a peregrine falcon, both of which are actually birds of conservation interest. So they are quite applicable to our talks about conservation. In addition to being just cool, because American kestrels are adorable, and peregrine falcons are rad. And everyone knows why they're rad, it's because they're the fastest creatures on Earth. And they decide, you know what, I'm going to hunt a duck, not by grabbing with my talons or anything like that, but just by slamming into it at, Mach 3 and just shattering half of its bones, and then, just severing its spine once it's on the ground. That's how they roll. Peregrines are metal. They're cool. But yes, so we usually target schools and classrooms and things, but we also do a fair amount of presentations for after-school groups and adult groups. We present pretty regularly for the Edmonton Nature Club. We'll occasionally do guest lectures for universities and colleges. I think we have a couple guest lectures being lined up for Lakeland College out in Vermilion. We're still working on getting that arranged. We'll sometimes do for-profit events. Sarah once did a brief presentation with a peregrine falcon at a Edmonton Oilers game. So it was for an audience of 20,000 that she did a little bit with a falcon stand there, which is cool. Probably a bit intimidating, big crowd. And the education program usually is successful enough that it takes up a pretty significant portion of the winter. Last winter, not so much. And this winter, still a lot up in the air. But I anticipate it being a little bit alright toward the second half of winter. First half, I think it's going to be a bit of a wash, but we'll see. We'll have to see how things shake out. I'll continue to be making videos. Did I just bang the sponsor board with my hat? I hope I didn't rub anything out there. I didn't. That's good. don't think Sarah got weather on that check. Oh no, she did. Way ahead of me. And now we're into the hurry up and wait part of things. You've been staring at me for about probably 40 minutes now, since we let that last owl go. Hopefully we get another one. It's not a lot we can do to actually control it. Have I mentioned the way we monitor for owls? Not sure I covered that. I'll go over that again for anybody who's just joined. So with songbirds, we have a number of mist nets set up throughout our census area. Mist nets are a specialized kind of trap that they're made of a nylon mesh, pardon me, that is incredibly difficult to see, hence the name mist net. So songbirds, when they're hanging out in trees, they tend to swoop low and fast through any kind of opening. And the nets are strategically positioned through a bunch of these openings in near habitat where they like to hang out. And so as they swoop through, they hit the nets. The net naturally forms a pocket around them that they hang in. We come around every half hour, fish them out, bring them back to the lab and do our thing. Extraction is usually pretty easy depending on the species. Warblers you can just pluck right out. Chickadees are an experience. And that's all I want to say on that. Well, a lot of us just figuring out how the bird went in and bringing it out that exact same way. Once we have it back to the lab, we put a band on it, we take our measurements, we release it back into the wild. Whole process from net to release usually takes less than 10 minutes, not including time walking it back and forth to the lab. With owls, they don't quite have the same habits. Our owls right now are actively migrating, so they're flying south, well, not quite south. They're flying overhead the natural area, all headed in a singular direction. And when they're doing that, they're usually high above the trees. We don't really have a chance of catching them passively unless they just decide to hang around and calm down for whatever reason. Usually don't. So we broadcast their breeding call, which tempts them down, lures them down from the sky into the trees. They'll circle around the player, hit one of our nets strategically positioned around it, and then we'll come around and bring them out the same way we would songbirds. The reason we don't you can technically do playback targeting audio for songbirds, but our fall migration board has 53 species on it. Usually audio playback's only good for targeting one. So at least 53 species of songbirds that utilize the natural area. Meanwhile, there are exactly 3 species of owls that utilize the natural area. So if we target one songbird, we'll be losing out on a huge amount of diversity. If we target one owl, we're not losing out on that much. And that said, we do actually run separate programs targeting long-eared and boreal owls. The long-eared owl program is on hold because of some technical issues we've been having with it. The boreal owl program will be starting up in a few days. We usually start that up on October 15th. Volunteers need training. Actually, part of the volunteering process is actually training you on how to band. We usually like to get volunteers at least handling a bird on their first day. The actual mechanics of just holding onto a bird aren't very difficult. It's the really finer stuff like extracting and understanding molt and aging and all that, and more importantly, reclaiming a bird that's starting to get away from you. That's the bit that starts getting a little tricky. But like I said, part of the whole volunteering process is actually training volunteers on how to band, how to hold birds, and all that. So volunteers that show up several times do get to band birds occasionally. If you're a very regular volunteer, we have a couple of those that we know and trust. We very often have them just run nets, extract birds, band unsupervised. And even before you get to that point, which does take a while, before you get to that point, you still represent an extra pair of hands, which is always great. We're always happy to have that. There's never enough hands to go around, and there's always something for you to do. How does one volunteer? We have instructions on how to volunteer on our website. You know what? That actually reminds me, I should probably put that in the video description as well. We've set up a new volunteer portal. So more or less what you're doing is you are signing up on a new volunteer. You're signing up using a form, and that enters you automatically into a... you know what, I'm just not going to talk while I'm doing this. Give me a second. There we go, description's been updated. Okay, now I can talk again. Right, you're basically just filling out a form on a new portal that we've set up, enters your information into the portal that we use to actually schedule you. At one point, we'll enter your information into that manually. You'll be automatically emailed sign-in instructions. Use those, sign up for shifts. We have the whole thing set up for you. You just basically pick and choose the shifts that you want and come in then. For this season, probably not a huge amount of volunteer opportunities left, if any, because we are winding down, or we've already wound down Songbird Migration. Songbird Migration is basically done. There's technically 7 days left in it, but I wasn't able to open Songbird nets today. It was too cold for the first 4.5 hours, and then too windy for the last hour and a half. And we've got probably 2-3 weeks of owl banding left, which point it starts to drop off into the third. So probably something more for more to keep in mind for next year, which will be fine because pandemic should probably maybe have chilled out finally by then, allowing us to have more than one volunteer at any given time, which will be nice, but we shall see. They're still out of the nets, which may be a good sign. I don't want to try and get too ahead of myself. I'm going to duck out for a moment to see if I can get a glimpse of aurora. Give you guys an aurora update. If anybody's in Edmonton, Sherwood Park, just general BBO area, feel free to poke your head out the window right now as well. This is the aurora break. Didn't spot any aurora activity. Was hoping I'd be able to say I did spot some flying squirrels though, but I didn't. They're not around right now. We do have a resident pair that comes to our feeder every single night. They're adorable. Not much more to be said about them. They're cute. Flying squirrels. They're squirrels and they glide. They're cool. They're also nocturnal, which is why most people don't actually see them, because they're active when humans are not. You do see them if you're an insane owl bander, being awake at times when no sane person should be. Sarah's a night owl. I am not. I'm actually forcing myself to stay up tonight because I'm switching from songbirds to owls, so I'm running this stream just by virtue of having to force myself to stay up so it's not a shock to my system to stay up until 2 a.m. tomorrow. Please tell me you have something. Hey! Alright, I can switch back to the other overlay.
I'm going to put that there, and I am going to take off the layer.
By all means.
little guy was also tongued, so.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad though.
No.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't great.
Yeah. Well, tonguing's never fun, but
Yeah.
that's what we watch for, and that's what we're careful
Yeah.
of.
Oh yeah. Just the tonguings I've seen, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
More tongue than some of the others I've seen.
And our wind is still lightly present, and our moon is still out there.
We are catching stuff.
We are, which is wonderful.
Yep. Light breeze, cool, clear.
Yeah.
Ooh, you're a feisty one.
Yes.
I'm glad I decided not to be ballsy and just reach in.
Hey, you want to grab that owl before it grabs you.
There's a little thing that we always do for social media.
Because they're so cute.
And they look all cute and swaddled like this. As you angrily blink at me.
Yep.
Not clapping, at least.
So for clacking, for those of you who don't know, it's just there we go, a little bit. There's
There we
Selwyn
go.
just clacking his little bill, acting all big and scary.
Bill clapping is actually a pretty common defensive display among the raptors.
If you
Ooh,
scrap, I
don't be
guess.
grabbing me, thank you very much.
You do that, I can come around here and answer some people's questions while you continue to band.
This is a lovely demonstration of zygodactyl grip this guy pulled there.
Oh, have you answered the question about volunteering yet?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Then I won't repeat the question.
And I even went further and added the volunteer link to our description.
Perfect.
4-4.
Correct.
Through the ruler on the floor.
That's okay. I got another one right beside me. There you go.
So for those of you just joining, lightweight aluminum band. Each of those bands has a completely unique 9-digit number and gets placed on the bird's leg. They're specifically sized for each species of bird, so it doesn't pose any risk of injury to them whatsoever. And because it's just aluminum, it's highly malleable, so these pliers are able to bend and close without too much force. Once I have it mostly closed, I'm then giving it a spin. As you can see, owl legs, very floofy. Part of their, one of their adaptations for silent flight. So I need to give it a spin a couple times in order to flatten down all the fluff so it doesn't get caught in the actual band. And there we go. That band now stays on the bird's leg for the rest of its life, allowing us to track it as an individual. Is the new lab heated inside? I mean, yeah, it's got a wood stove. I had it going this morning. It was lovely.
Yes, having the wood stove is magical, because for those of you who've seen our old lab building, it did not have a heat stove for the last couple of years. And so we'd be banding out here until -15. We'd be sleeping out here at -20 with no heating source. Yeah. So we got used to a lot of hot water bottles at our feet while we sleep, maybe one at our chest to curl up against, and lots of wool and lots of layers of sleeping bags to stay nice and toasty. So this new building is very luxurious for us, and we are very, very thankful to be able to work here and have this as our new research and education center.
So, same as the last one. As you can see from the wing, all those feathers are uniform. There's it's usually very, very obvious when you have that retained tract in the middle, because it goes from, as our summer student likes to say, a dark chocolate flavor to a milk chocolate flavor. So cocoa content goes down from about 70% to something more resembling about 20. Very complex biological notes. It's just the feather is being worn out by sunlight. A lot of the pigments in owls' feathers actually will decay under sunlight. So UV will destroy those pigments and cause them to just look a bit more faded. A lot of bird feathers end up doing that. So next, flattened wing chord measurement. This one comes in at 142. So that makes it female by default because our scale only goes to 141. Past that, it's definitely a female. Don't even need to look at anything else. Tail is 70. Oh my god. I didn't even look at the scale. The weight's 106.5. That's...
That is a very large lady.
That's chunky.
That is a very healthy lady.
You must have eaten a mouse or something.
Or she just had very large adult parrots.
Maybe. There's a bit of blood around the talons.
Did you have a meal recently?
So you might have murdered something. So, some of the other cool things about owls. You may notice, first of all, this owl is adorable. As I always like to say, it's not because it's actually cute, it's because human brains are hardwired to look at things with large eyes and think they're cute. Because human babies come out with their eyes fully grown, but their skull's not fully developed, so the overall head grows where the eyes don't. So when they're born, they have disproportionately large eyes, and our monkey hindbrain is designed to see large eyes and go, ooh, baby. So it activates a nurturing instinct. So this isn't actually cute, your brain's just short-circuiting into thinking it is. Anyway, the reason they have large eyes is because this is, of course, a nocturnal species. Nocturnal animals usually have very large eyes in order to collect as much faint light as possible. Saw-whet, or owl eyes specifically, are actually so specialized for nightlife that they're not ball-shaped anymore. They're tube-shaped, structured like a telescope. Oop. Can you not? Why are you biting me? You're not supposed to bite me!
So most of our saw-whets are not nippers. But occasionally, some of them are extra feisty, like this lovely
lady. You're just
grabbing.
Oh, you're chewing on me. Stop!
And this is the hazard of dealing with wildlife. They are, of course, wild creatures and have a personality of their own.
So the reason I'm so scandalized is that owls and hawks usually never bite because their beak is close to their eyes. They don't have a lot of power in their beak, and it just puts their eyes at what they consider to be unacceptable risk. Depending
on species, some of them are more feistier and will bite you.
Some of them are feistier than others. Yeah, long ears will go for you. Long-eared owls, rather. But saw-whets not typically, so that's why I was so scandalized by that. It didn't actually hurt that much, I was more just viscerally offended. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, telescope eyes. So as a result of their eyes being telescopes, they can see incredibly well in the dark and have a really great depth of focus, but they can't actually turn their eyes. You'll notice that the entire time I've had this one, or had her rather, her eyes have been fixed staring straight ahead. So of course owls do of course have that ability to turn their heads a ridiculous amount, which this one isn't being cooperative with me. You want to look at my fingers? They're moving. Movement is exciting. No? Okay. That's fine. But yeah, they can turn their heads nearly 270 degrees. And I wonder if I can get this to show up on camera. Maybe. Saw-whets. Ay! Ooh, you grabbed me. Ooh, you got me. Yeah, you got me. You got me. You can let go. You can let go whenever you want. Thank you. Ow. Right, so saw-whets specifically have very large ears relative to the actual size of their head. And it's so large you can actually see the back of their eyes through the ear itself. How do we know when an owl is in distress? We actually like seeing birds that are kind of flapping and grabbing at you like this because it means they're nice and energetic. When birds are very heavily stressed, they start seeming like they're going into shock. With raptors, they start acting basically like they're overheating. They'll be panting heavily, beak will be hanging open, wings will be drooping, and this girl is still very energetic, very alert. Owls are very hardy and can deal with being handled like this for a while. And the way we handle birds is also specifically designed to minimize stress. So with Bander's grip, birds restrained. Ow. I deserve that. Oh, that's hooked right in there. With Bander's grip, the bird's restrained, but not tightly held. It's just a light restraint, which actually keeps them pretty calm. Anyway, let's see if I can do the ear thing. So you can see the back of their eye through the ear. If I can see the one ear over here. Yeah, you can kind of see that showing up. And you can really see the tube shape of the eye through there. There we go, now the shadow's not in the way. So that's pretty cool, huh? So I think this one's about ready to go. Except I haven't finished doing the rest of the stuff, have I?
Yeah, we're good to go. Want me to grab her?
Body mold? I do have body mold.
Yeah.
And we'll have Sarah take this one and release it outside.
Wish her a very happy migration, and hopefully get captured again another time at some other observatory.
Ideally. Speaking of getting recaptured, I don't know how closely a lot of you follow us on social media, probably at least a little, because that's how most of you found the live stream link. We recaptured a owl it was a couple of weeks ago now. It was several weeks ago. It was halfway through September. Oh god, it was almost a month ago. Where's the season been going? Where am I? Yeah, owl. Anyway, recaptured it. It had a weird band number. The band series we've been using starts with 5.2. This one started with 3.9, which is weird, but I thought, okay, sure, it's probably one of Jeff's. Jeff Holroyd, our chair, he bands owls just as a hobby by his house near Islet Lake, which is about a 20-minute drive from here. So we capture his birds every now and then, so we figured it was just one of his. Let's just get back to that, yeah. Figured it was one of his. It wasn't. He asked a couple band of friends of his if they knew the number, and they didn't. So I submitted a formal recapture record to the USGS. And whenever you do that, it spits out where it was originally banded from. And the location it spat out was Elk County, Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 kilometers away, most of that distance east. Then even BBO saw for a second when the banding is done. Yeah. Glad you were able to come out, Marianne. Anyway, so ridiculously far distance away, ridiculously far east, which is weird, right? Because birds are supposed to go south. What is this one going east? We've actually found that a lot of our saw-whet owls don't go straight south. In a lot of cases, they'll fly due east because we have there's a few banders near Saskatoon who capture owls with really weird frequency. Like they'll get 5 or 6 of ours every year, which is really high for foreign recaptures. So we have a theory that's backed up by a couple of analyses we've done that western owls will fly east and only start swinging south once they hit the Great Lakes. Because the main thing they're trying to avoid is the Great Plains. Saw-whet owls are a forest species, so you're probably going to want to avoid an area that has no forest. Not exactly the friendliest habitat for you. So they usually hug the southern end of the boreal forest, ride that all the way south into Ontario, down to the Great Lakes, and only start swinging south once they get into that Carolinian forest. So that's probably what this one was doing. Either that, or it was originally hatched in Pennsylvania and then just gradually dispersed west as it aged. That's the other possibility. But that's anticlimactic, and so I won't be considering that. But yeah, stuff like that, you get some pretty cool recapture records sometimes. Occasionally one of our birds gets recaptured somewhere. I think one of ours, we got notification that one of ours that we banded in late September got recaptured in Saskatoon a week later. So it already traveled about 600 kilometers, which is pretty decent. Going a good ways. And, oh yeah, longest distance recovery in our entire history was not an owl. It was a Baltimore oriole, which was, it was a bird that Sarah banded actually in the spring. Gorgeous after second year male. And then a few months later, or rather in the fall, it was recovered in Colombia, which is in South America, which is nearly 6,000 kilometers away, which is insane. It's the longest distance recovery in our observatory's entire 37-year history, which is pretty cool. That's a really long way for that bird to fly. And stuff like that is also of conservation interest because Baltimore orioles are a species that aren't really doing so well. We've lost about 25% of their population over the last 20 years. And Colombia, that region of South America, is a region that's undergoing a particularly severe amount of deforestation. And I was discussing earlier how birds use a variety of different habitats. They have breeding habitat, non-breeding habitat, migratory habitat, and each of those serves as its own distinct bottleneck. It's only a bird population can only be as robust as the least of those habitats can support. So if you start knackering their non-breeding habitat, it doesn't matter if their breeding and migratory habitat is just fine, that's still going to represent a bottleneck and is going to drop their population accordingly. Just because it's impacting their winter survivorship. So there will be less coming back to breed in the spring, which results in less recruitment into the population, and you have less survivorship over the winter, which population dynamics, that's the general way that they work. We got about 5 minutes until check. I think I'm actually going to go on this next net check, just because I've been standing here for a while. I need to stretch my legs. So I'll fling on the BRB overlay and see what we bring back from that. And I've actually been going for nearly the whole runtime now. Doesn't feel like I've been going for an hour and a half. Probably because I started 10 minutes late thanks to technical difficulties. YouTube is a great place to stream and it works perfectly with OBS and integrates flawlessly and never has any issues or anything that forces me to nuke a stream because it refuses to recognize OBS's output. Don't mind me, just a tech rant. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Did I hear technical difficulties?
No, I was complaining about the tech difficulties I had trying to start the stream.
Ah, yes. Technology can be challenging.
Yeah. Once we have the stream going, it's going smoothly. I have no dropped frames. OBS actually tells me when I'm dropping frames, and it says dropped frames 0.
Very fancy.
My CPU use is hovering right around 20%, which is, low.
Okay, sure. Whatever you say. Awesome.
Yeah, you go on to bed. Don't need to stay up too late on our account. If, by the way...
stay up till 3 a.m. with me?
I mean, like you can, if you want, in solidarity.
No, we won't hold you on here for too long. For that long, I should say.
Favorite / most exciting bird banded this fall monitoring? You know the answer.
Wait. Oh, yes I do. That took me a minute. Okay. If you got, most of you have probably already seen the video. But this year we caught and banded our 3rd ever pileated woodpecker, which is Alberta's largest species of woodpecker, and actually Canada's largest species of woodpecker now I'm thinking about it. Bird. And these was a hatch-year male, and so this is first year of life, and our forest is too young to sustain this population. Our trees aren't big enough for them to produce or drill cavities to nest in, so this is most likely just a young of the year that was dispersing across the landscape looking for new territories. And it was really exciting because I had just gotten up after doing owls the night beforehand. I was a little groggy, and I was talking to some of our volunteers that were in the clearing in between checks. And this pileated flew by the clearing and perched on a tree nearby. And I pointed it out to our volunteers because one of them is from France, so all the birds are really exciting to her. And we watched this pileate for a minute or two, and then it flew off into the direction of our mist nets. And so I ran over to the edge of the mist net lane, and I looked down the lane, and on the first net, but way down in the back of the second net, I could see it, and I just ran, because with our larger birds, they don't get very well tangled in our nets because the holes are designed to catch smaller birds, so the net actually acts more like a trampoline and they tend to bounce out. So if there's a large bird in the net, you want to run for it because they're not going to be in there for very long. And I ran to get the bird out of the net, shaking with adrenaline and excitement. It was so awesome.
I was upstairs doing some data entry. And, the windows were open because it was a relatively warm day, and I was really fixated on something, so I was kind of tuning out everything else, and then something finally broke through, which was just like this, meh, 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 meh. I was like, wow, something's really going nuts out there. And then it kept going, and then it got closer, and I was like, I got something cool. So I went down just in time to see Sarah put the pileate into the bag and just go, dibs!
Yeah.
So the video I've linked in chat is the video I made about that pileated woodpecker. So if you haven't seen that yet, by all means, give it a look.
Yeah, and very exciting, not only because it's our 3rd one ever captured and banded at this observatory, but for me personally, I was on site for the 2nd one ever banded back in like 2018, 2019, or 2018. And again, I was on owls, and our assistant biologist at the time didn't realize how exciting of a bird this was.
Wasn't me, for the record.
No, yep, wasn't Shane, someone else. And they banded, processed, and released this woodpecker without waking me up. And that was only the second one in like 30 plus years of banding, and I missed it even though I was on site because I was asleep. So I've been waiting for one ever since, and I was very, very thrilled that we were lucky enough to catch and band one this year. So that's definitely the most exciting bird that we've caught so far this fall migration. There have been many others, but I'll leave that to Shane because it is net check time again. So it's time for me to check our nets.
Actually, I'm actually going to be following you on this one just so I can stretch my legs a bit.
Okay.
I have an overlay specifically for that saying, hey, I'll be right back.
Perfect. We will be right back, guys. Okay. So fingers crossed. Think owl hooting thoughts.
Yeah.
And we'll see what we got.
Before I go, I'm just going to quickly answer that question. We actually put one of these owl bands on it because pileated woodpeckers take a size 4. These are a 4 short. We didn't have any normal 4s, and Sarah absolutely refused to let it go unbanded for very good reason. So there's in the middle of our saw wet records, there's one random pileated woodpecker record with one of these bands. But yeah, it works. It's perfectly fine to put one of these bands on a pileated woodpecker. It's the same diameter and everything, still fits fine on the leg. It's just these bands are a little bit shorter to account for a saw wet's more stubby legs. Anyway, I'm going to follow Sarah on check. I'll be right back with you guys in about 10 minutes or so. We're back. Unfortunately, we're empty-handed. However, we did see something down there kind of interesting. There's a barred owl hanging out by the saw wet nets, which is weird and interesting because this isn't the right habitat for them. Barred owls prefer mature forest with large trees. We don't have that. So barred owls here are highly unusual, and with it hanging out right near the nets, there's a possibility we might catch it. So, she's got dibs.
Well, fingers crossed, we'll see. There's a possibility we might catch it. There's also a good strong possibility that it might hit the net and bounce right out. Other bird observatories often catch barred owls occasionally in their saw-whet owl nets because our barred owls are predators for our saw-whets. I know Rocky Point Bird Observatory out west catches a lot of them and then releases them back into the wild after holding them. Usually they hold them overnight so they can release them somewhere else because being natural predators to our saw-whet owls, they don't want to have them released right where they're banding all of our saw-whets. But this is the first time I've ever seen a barred owl here, and I have been working at the BBO for the last 5 years, involved for the last 9. And I have no information or knowledge of us ever catching a barred owl here. There might be a chance somewhere in our 37-year history that we've caught one before, but at least not in the last decade. So I'm really hoping we have no saw-whets on X-checked and a barred owl instead. We will see.
So, quick question. We got an error. YouTube was throwing us error messages for a bit. Are we still up? Are we alive?
Questions?
Can somebody in chat confirm stream is not dead?
Here, let me open it.
Dun dun dun.
Because it looks fine on this end, but that.
You guys are fine to go in the other room if you need to. No. Our chat is quiet. That's not a good sign.
It is also 10:40 p.m.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, woo, there we go.
Stream is not dead. Thank you.
Okay.
Alright, that's good. The stream cut out briefly at one point, it looks like. But yeah, so, barred owl hanging out by the nets. So what it's probably doing is it's hearing the saw-whet territorial call and going, ooh, that's something I can snack on. So it's kind of doing the same thing that the saw-whets do. It's sort of spiraling around and getting closer and closer, and hopefully, as we speak, bumbling into the nets, getting itself nice and tangled so it has no chance of getting out before we get to it. And also getting those talons nice and tangled so it doesn't murder us.
I'm not too worried. And the most important thing with your larger owls is, of course, grabbing those legs first and immobilizing the legs, because the talons are the scary part.
Yeah.
That's where they can do damage. So whenever we're approaching a larger owl in the net, first thing we do is control those feet.
A saw-whet grabbing me is a mild inconvenience.
Yeah.
A barred owl grabbing me is, oh god, get the first aid kit. Get the National Guard. Get the President of the United States.
We're not American.
Get the Prime Minister.
There we go.
Trudeau, help me.
But no, we're all trained here on how to handle our birds of prey, and including our little raptors up to our bigger owls. Some of us are more experienced than others, but that's just time and years out in the field. And I will be beyond the moon thrilled if we catch this barred owl. And again, this is the first time I've ever seen one here in the last 5 years. I've never heard of any of the past Vics having a barred owl here. So that is very exciting, and it's most likely, if we do catch it, I have a very strong feeling it's probably going to be another hatchier bird that is dispersing and looking for its own territory. So it probably wandered into our natural area, which has very much a mixed age, younger forest habitat, and won't be suitable for our barred owls to actually live in, because our barred owls are cavity nesters, so they need a really large hole inside a tree in which to have their nest. And here at the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory and in the Beaver Hill natural area where we are located, our trees are very small, they're very thin, and our trees don't really mature to a very old age here because we're right on the historical shorelines of Beaver Hill Lake. And this very shallow water lake bed means that our water table here is very high, and our root systems on our trees tend to drown out and rot with all of the high water that we see throughout the years. And then we just need one good windstorm to come in and blow down our trees. So most of our trees are young to medium age, and we don't get a lot of old, mature mixed wood. Old, mature forests and trees that would support a barred owl to actually live here year-round.
Don't mind me scribbling off camera, by the way. I was just reminded of some paperwork I need to do. Also, barred owl. Wow. It's on DETs now.
Perfect.
So one of the things we do along with our migration monitoring is we keep a collection of daily estimated totals, which is just everything we've banded, everything we've seen, everything we bumbled across that day. We have separate columns for stuff we banded, stuff we saw in standardized census, and stuff we just saw in other circumstances. So that barred owl goes in other.
And then all this information that we're collecting into our DET gets shared not only with Birds Canada, but also with eBird. And I hope most of you guys already know about eBird, but if you don't, eBird is this phenomenal website where you can contribute to science. You can contribute your observations of birds you see while you're walking to school, while you're out for a stroll, while you're sitting in your house sipping a cup of tea, looking out your backyard at all the birds. And by recording these observations to eBird, you're contributing to a global database of bird observations, which then research can take that information and do some phenomenal data analysis. And so you're acting as field techs for our researchers, and it's a really fantastic and easy way for you guys to help with bird conservation and help us with our understanding of how birds are using the landscape. And it's also really fun because then you can keep track of your own birding lists. From year to year, you can see when was the first time you saw a mountain bluebird this year compared to last year, and when was the last viewing of a tree swallow from last year to this year. And so it's a good way of keeping track of the birds you're seeing. A lot of birders I know have their life list on there, so the list of all the different species they've seen in their entire life is found on that database, and you can have your own profile so you can look at all the lists you've submitted over the course of your birding activities. And you don't have to be an expert birder to be on eBird. Just start with the basics, record a magpie, a robin, a crow, a tree sparrow. And just work your way up from that. And there's lots of different apps that you can use to help you identify birds. There's iBird Pro, there's Merlin, I know Sibley's has an app as well. And there's also, of course, your field guides, which I'm old school. I like having a field guide. And I also do have an app, but I use my iBird Pro for all the vocalizations. So as you start with birding, you kind of start off with visual identification and seeing a bird and figuring out what it is. And as you get more and more into it, you start learning that you need to actually start learning all the different calls they're making, because you often hear the bird first before you see it. And so that's just a little fun tip. And that's our information gets shared with many different organizations, and all the data we collect is shared as widely as possible so that all of our research is having the greatest impact when it comes to our understanding of wildlife movements, conservation, and research. And so not only do all of our birding information get added to eBird and to Bird Studies Canada, we have trail cameras set up throughout the natural area monitoring our mammal populations. And that gets shared with Alberta Fish and Wildlife, as well as ABMI, Alberta Biodiversity Monitoring Institute's Wild Tracks program. Our bat information gets shared with eBat and the the Canadian Wildlife Service. Not the Canadian Wildlife Service. Wildlife Conservation Service. Sorry, this is a new organization we're partnering up with this year. So that is helping to our understanding with our bats. Our butterfly data gets shared with eButterfly. And so we're trying to have the greatest impact with all the data we're collecting.
Because we're bird biologists. We are not everything biologists. We could be, but that would probably involve just doing everything poorly. So we'd rather do one thing really well, collect the rest of the data, and then send it off to people who are a lot better at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got about 10 more minutes till net check.
10 minutes for that barred owl to bumble into the net.
Hopefully he hits the net now and he's only stuck for 10 minutes, then he won't be too tangled. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Get those talons nice and in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talons and toes, that'd be great. Maybe shoulder hooked in.
Shoulder hooked in. Only lightly.
Yeah.
A little bit over the elbow.
Do you guys have any questions for us while we wait another 10 more minutes till next net check?
Yeah. We do have chat here for a reason. Viewership has been dropping off,
That's okay.
unsurprisingly, because it's late.
It's late and our owls are taking their time, and that's okay.
We got a few right off the bat, which is good. That's I'm honestly quite happy about that. I was a little bit nervous about tonight because, like I said, conditions are not optimal. There's quite a bit of wind out right now, and it's gusting a bit, and the sound of that usually tends to either carry away or drown out the sound of our audio lures, which is what we're relying on in order to bring the owls in and down. What are some of the cool mammals you've seen around BBO? Well, we have... might want to bring in John for that one.
I am blanking on this. Oh,
Jeez.
yes, indeed. Continue.
But yeah, so one of the ones that's quite fun is we have a resident family of northern flying squirrels that are on our feeders basically every single day like clockwork. They're nocturnal, so we only really regularly see them during the owl season, but they're around. We also occasionally get a much closer look at them than we typically want when they find our owl nets the hard way. Yeah.
They're not the funnest to take out of a net, but that is why, not only while we're on net check, do we have the bags to put the birds in, a stick to push up the net, but I also have a handy dandy little emergency kit that has leather gloves for flying squirrels. And so, because they are rodents, they are stuck in a net and are not impressed. And so I have to wear big leather gloves to restrain them safely for their safety and my own. And gently take them out of the net, but our flying squirrels tend to also chew their way through the net as they're waiting for us to come and take them out, so they can get quite tangled. So it's never fun when we catch a flying squirrel. They usually destroy our net sufficiently that we have to shut it down for the night. It's not safe to operate anymore, and then the next morning we have to spend time fixing that net.
Usually takes a while.
It does, but that's just kind of fun with the flying squirrels.
We also have flying squirrels, not flying squirrels, not the other thing, the thing that has quills, porcupines. We have porcupines hanging around that we named Frank. That's why I got it mixed up, because it's...
We got Frank our porcupine.
Yes.
Sometimes Frank finds himself a Frankie, and together they have a Frank Jr. We've seen some juveniles wander around the natural area. We also have a resident family of skunks named Stevie, and they're little Stevelings.
Yeah.
And they're very cute, and unfortunately moved underneath one of our bunkhouses this year.
The one that John was under. Hence why I was thinking of having him talk about that.
And he's our other assistant biologist for the fall season. And unfortunately, they moved under and had their baby, so we had to wait until the young were old enough to leave the burrow / our bunkhouse. And then we could proceeded to animal-proof the building so that doesn't happen again in the future.
We tried unsuccessfully to get them to leave by shining lights underneath and blasting classic rock. They weren't impressed, and instead of leaving, they just sprayed. So, made the problem worse.
Yep. Let them finish their thing, let them have their babies, safely emerge, and we've solved it so it won't be an issue again next year.
We also have moose hanging around. We occasionally get them on our trail cams. In fact, it's honestly really funny when we see a moose in the trail cams, because sometimes we'll see one come through and we'll just get the standard 3-shot burst of it walking past. And very often we'll have like 27 pictures in a row of just blurred fur, which is a moose just rubbing against the tree that the trail camera is on. Because oftentimes larger mammals will use trees as scratching posts. And so when it's scratching against that tree, it's just constantly triggering the trail camera, which is taking beautiful pictures of absolutely nothing.
We also have a bunch of white-tailed deer in our natural area, as well as a couple mule deer that can be spotted. Lots of coyotes, a very healthy coyote population I hear every evening, howling away as their packs get together and hunt. Yeah. We have weasels, we have mice and voles and shrews. Occasionally, we used to have some ground squirrels, but we had a badger water through one year, and in the couple weeks he was here, he ate all the ground squirrels. So we haven't had one since.
I haven't heard about that.
Yep, I had visitors show me for a couple days in a row photos of badgers on the trail, and I was so excited because I wanted to see them. I never did, but he was around, we know he was there, and our ground squirrels took a hit, but so it goes. Everyone's got to eat, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what else do we have in here?
This is a fun one. When did you guys know you want to specialize in birds? That's a fun one for both of us because neither of us started out our biology careers thinking that we were going to get into birds. In university, I was convinced for about a year that I wanted to be a botanist. And then I realized that any jobs in botany are basically you're working for Monsanto. And I decided, you know what, maybe I don't want to do that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to be an entomologist instead because, you know, plants are still cool and plants rely on insects a lot. And insects are kind of cool. I kind of like bugs. There's lots of diversity, lots of cool stuff. And then I realized that the only real job in entomology is either working for Monsanto again or pouring through water samples looking at fly larvae. And I decided, I mean, I could. And then on a lark, just on a whim, I volunteered at Long Point Bird Observatory. And I was thinking like, yeah, you know, I'll try out birds, because I think, birds are kind of cool, I guess. They're sort of pretty. I know birds a little bit. But I never really thought that I'd have any realistic career in them because, like, I'm not a morning person. And I didn't think I'd be able to tolerate the early mornings. Turned out not only could I tolerate the early mornings, I actually really liked working with birds. So I came back the next year, spent 3 months there, yeah, Bob's your uncle. Sarah, meanwhile, started off her career obsessed with reptiles and amphibians. I don't actually know exactly when you switched over to birds.
Well, I got about 1 minute to give my story. So, I originally started off with herps. I loved our reptiles and amphibians because I grew up in southern Ontario where there's lots of them. And I did 2 summer jobs with reptile handling and public education, which was really fun. But through that, being in that field and talking to all the different people and experts there, I realized that in order to compete in the world of herpetology, I needed a minimum of a master's, if not a PhD, to compete for very few jobs with very little funding and very high competition. And while I loved reptiles and amphibians, I was kind of tired of my university education. I am very much not a person that likes to be on the computer. I like to be in the woods, and that wasn't for me. And so my first winter, I started applying for different field jobs. I applied for a mammal field job studying cougars. Didn't get it. I applied for a fish job. I had no experience. I applied for a botany job. I knew very little about plants. And I applied for a bird job. And at that point, I had taken 1 ornithology course in college. And I was successful in that application because I was enthusiastic and I could identify a couple of my ducks and shorebirds. And so my first job was working with Bird Studies Canada, doing marsh bird surveys across the prairies. And they taught me all the basics. They showed me this wonderful world of birding. And ever since then, I've been hooked. And I've just gone from one bird job to another as I continue to build my skill set and my birding experience with both ID visually and audio. And so my career has taken me from in the prairies up into the Arctic and the Queen Maud Gulf Bird Sanctuary studying our snow geese. I've gone into northern Alberta doing boreal forest birding surveys. Throughout that time, I was also here at the BBO as a volunteer banding owls. And I've even been able to go overseas with my work doing research with our endangered species of kiwis and kakarikis in New Zealand. And I did spend a stint in Madagascar working with mammals, which was very exciting. I worked with lemurs. That was awesome.
Weeping lemurs?
No, I was working with our black and white rough lemur, and then I volunteered with aye-ayes and bamboo lemurs, greater bamboo lemurs, which is really fun. But most mammal jobs, you're often seeing the signs of the animals have been there, so they're scratching, their fur left over, their scat, or using trail cameras, and you don't spend a lot of time actually interacting with the animal, which is what I really enjoy, is getting one-on-one with wildlife, which is what's kept me in the birding world. I love being able to have birds in the hand, see them up close, get a really good look at their flight feathers, and learning about their molt sequence and how that relates to the environment. And there's just so much, there's so many different types of birds, and your birding skills can transfer from one field job to the other. And with that, it's time to check the nets and see if we have maybe a larger owl. If I'm really, really lucky, I'm not expecting it, but one can hope. So I will be back.
Yeah. I'll come with Sarah as well, because she might need the assist. Songbird fall migration monitoring cutoff different from west coast to east coast. I think it's probably mostly just local climate and latitude and when the birds are coming through, so it probably differs, but by how much I can't actually say. I don't know when the cutoffs for, say, Rocky Point are. And Rocky Point's skewed anyway because it's further south in a more tropical climate, so. Anyway. Let's see if I can bring the barred owl back.
Things like me now.
So I've been informed that I've made a grievous missed opportunity. The BBO will BRB screen should read "I will be right back," and that was a terrible oversight on my part, and I apologize. Also, we didn't catch anything. No barred owl, no sign of it, which is a shame. It was a small chance, and we can hope, but oh well.
I wasn't expecting it. I was hoping for it, but the chances of us actually catching one are very, very slim.
Yeah.
So. We can hope and dream that maybe we'll catch it at some point this evening. You guys can see photos of it on social media tomorrow. But I'm not expecting it. It'll be really cool though.
And for now, we are over time as far as the stream is concerned, so I'll be probably calling it here because the alternative is fishing for things to say for another 20 minutes, and I don't have a lot of gas left.
You want to see if there's any other questions that popped in before we...
Yeah, let's just scroll back through chat and see if there was anything.
Questions.
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay.
All right, so for those of you still hanging on, you can go to bed now. If you missed any part of the stream, it automatically gets archived by YouTube, which you can watch after the fact and scrub back and everything, so that'll be cool. But in the meantime, thank you for tuning in. I've been Shane.
Oh, I am Sarah, and before we do that...
Oh, yeah.
Wait, I think this is my camera. Yes. We're going to take a quick moment at the very end to thank our sponsors. Oh my goodness, can I do this? Whoop, 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 whoop.
That way.
There we go. So here are all the wonderful different organizations that help support the research we do here at the BBO. And without them, we would not be able to do our research to learn more about our birds' movements and migrations to help with conservation. And we are sincerely thankful to each and every one of those. And so thank you all for joining us tonight. Hope you all had a blast. Oh goodness, technology. Your camera does not want to.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, there we go. Okay. But yeah, no, thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you had fun and got to enjoy owl banding with us. We got a couple, so
yeah,
we're happy for that.
It was definitely something. More than I was expecting. I expected this night to kind of suck. But we got a few. And we got that part. We saw that part out. We didn't get it.
It was very exciting. Very exciting. So.
Anyway, good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
It's that button.
Are you sure you want to